their attribution bias is essentially where you assume your negotiation style is the other party's association style. What I would say is stay within your style, because when you get outside of it, you look fake and everyone can tell. And there's two types of bets. So heads, you win $10. Tails, you get $0.
Okay.
Or we'll do another kind of bet where it's heads, you win $20. Tails, you lose $10. Which bet would you take?
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Account Management, a tactical guide to success. You got Fred Fuller here, and I have my co-host, good friend. We're gonna have to limit it at 2, so we'll go with Hooded Falcon and Connoisseur of Cadbury Eggs until another one comes along. But his real name is John Brown. John, how the heck are you, man?
I'm doing great. How are you, Fred? I don't have pithy nicknames for you. Like
it's the one part of the show that you just can't.
I don't have a. I got nothing. I don't have a. I've got nothing. Like I have no. Usually I can come up with something on the fly pretty quick. I've got nothing.
Nothing.
No, I'm bereft of words.
Bereft of words.
I intentionally am like really trying to maximize my vocabulary usage with you now, like just to see if I can get you to stop and go. What did he say? Yeah.
What did he say? I got him 3 times.
What are these words?
I got him 3 times on the Voss reflection thing. Yeah?
No, you didn't.
I did. I just nailed him. I just ate him up, and he's so mad right now. I ate him up. He didn't know it was coming. Hey, okay, well, welcome back. This is a sweet, sweet moment for me.
I'm already bored.
He's already bored. Okay. Well, I'm not, man. I'm having the time of my life. Best episode ever. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, this is part 2 of negotiations.
Episode 27. Part 2 of negotiations. Yes.
There's a lot of math. And I understand there might be a quiz in.
Oh, you're getting a math quiz in the middle of this. Yeah.
Well, I might lose my signal. I might just lose my signal, drop out of this thing, man. I do have a pride and ego and all kinds of stuff.
This URL is broken.
Yeah, you can't get nothing
on me.
Nothing going on up in here, something like that, right? Sign hanging on the door. Okay, right. So we're going to talk about negotiations, and you forewarned me before we started this episode. You did the usual, like behave and do better, but then you also said we have a lot of information to cover, so we kind of have. So
we're going to jump right in.
Okay, let's do it.
Avoid the usual discussion of Smoking the Bandit and Pop-Tarts and all that stuff that we normally do. We're going to skip over all that.
It's the power of what we do, John.
Yeah, the Gen X cultural touchstone review. We're going to skip it today.
Cultural. Those are big words.
That was a lot.
Yeah, that was a lot. Okay, right. So let's get serious. So we are going to go into negotiations. So in the last episode, we talked about negotiations. We talked about Zopa and BATNA and kind of framing the approach and the thought process preparation, right?
Yeah, that's what we talk
So now we're going to talk about process. We're going to talk about common mistakes.
That's right.
Ethics, legal kind of elements,
ethics.
And
that's it.
And then we'll see where it goes from there. So when we just jump in here and we talk about process, there's a thing that happens in negotiations where people feel like they've got to take on a different persona.
Yeah. This is what we were trying to do. This is sort of the reason why we're in the last episode. We were discouraging thinking of all negotiations as distributive negotiations. I win, you lose. And every negotiation is like I'm buying a car. Right. Now, by the way, for the record, when I'm buying a car or a house, my spouse hates to be near me, right? Because then I go full force. I use every trick that I possibly know, right? The problem is, particularly buying a car, you were dealing with another generally very savvy negotiator. So you're not gonna win that one. But buying a house is a little bit different because you're actually negotiating against. It really is against someone that does not negotiate hardly ever at all. Right. So if you do you can do all those preparation steps that we talked about in the last episode in a distributive negotiation, and you will come out pretty well ahead if you start thinking of all that stuff. So like there are times that they exist, but anyway, for integrative negotiations, what the first thing we would say in terms of process is negotiate with your style, not someone else's.
Right. And so people, I think when people think about negotiations, they're like, well, it's the hardcore big time alphas that just come in there and throw their elbows around and put everybody in their place, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what the mental model most people have. Even I sometimes, have that. But that's actually not the most successful negotiation. Will tell you that can be called for in certain situations, but it is not the primary tool for these kind of integrative negotiations we're talking about. So what I would say is stay within your style, because when you get outside of it, you look fake and everyone can tell, unless you're really, really experienced and a really, really good actor.
Right.
And most of us aren't.
No,
right. So don't bother. So there's a bunch of different styles out there, sort of read some of the books we recommended in the last episodes. Sort of typical styles are competitors, problem solvers, compromisers, accommodators, conflict avoiders. Actually, all of those can kind of work in different parts of a negotiation. But if you need to analyze, what does this negotiation sort of require? And then if you're not that person, maybe you need to bring somebody else in to help you. Right, that's one thing to consider, like bring another style in there if it's not your style. But for most negotiations, like being a problem solver and of some sort with maybe a little bit of competitiveness is probably a little bit of what you want in these as an account manager negotiating that big contract with your client.
So there's not a right or a wrong style. And what we talked about in the previous episode, we talked about not winning, right? But we also talked about knowing everybody on the field, knowing all the players that are involved.
Right.
And so you will have, if it's a real negotiation, right? Like if it's a big negotiation, there's serious money on the table or serious stakes on the table, then you will not be the only one involved in this conversation.
Yes.
There will be multiple players involved in this conversation. And so when we talk about knowing who's on the field, who's on the pitch, there's knowing when you need that competitor to step in.
Right.
When do you need a problem solver to show up, right? How do you think about how you leverage all the different personalities and capabilities that you have on the team?
Yeah, that's right.
With the other team, right?
Right.
So there's less about, forget about any one style, to John's point, to your point, like focus on your style.
Right.
And then let all those other styles be complementary.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. You'll move on to the next process.
So a little bit about attribution bias. You mentioned avoid the attribution bias to the other side. Tell me what that's about a little bit.
Yeah, that's important. So when you were just mentioning about bringing the people involved, and their attribution bias is essentially where you assume your negotiation style is the other party's association style. So this is a particularly kind of danger zone for competitive people, right? So if you are, or actually it's danger zone kind of for everybody, right? Like, so if you're kind of an accommodator or a problem solver, you may assume that the other side is going to be kind of like you and they want to work together, and they may be sharks, right? They may be really competitive. If you're really competitive and you come in full force with all of your competitive energy, into that negotiation, you're dealing with a bunch of kind of conflict avoidance people. You are going to be spinning your wheels in the negotiation, because they're going to withdraw and go talk to each other, right? And
that's right.
Like you're gonna, you think, if you're a real competitive negotiator, you think that is what works in every situation. And with certain kinds of people, like think about, like, what if you're negotiating something with another business and you're dealing with like the real back office people within the business that like don't do these kind of forward facing client roles. Like you're negotiating with somebody deep in the operations team. There might be a lot of people within there who are not competitive like that.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
So you bring all that kind of energy, you're going to harm the negotiation.
It's exactly right. This is not a hammer, nail, one size fits all thing.
Right.
This is very much a read the room.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this goes back to the last episode. We were talking a lot about preparation. This is part of the preparation. Like you need to think through what's that other party like. Sometimes you can't do that if you have like a minor negotiation. Let's say you're doing a very fast contract negotiation for a piece of software. You maybe don't have a lot of time to spend getting to know them, and figuring all these things out. And like, that's part of it as well. But, as you talk to the person, part of this is you have to sort of feel them out for what kind of negotiator they are, right?
what their priorities are, how they think about things, right? Absolutely.
Right. So I'm on the other side of the table a lot now, and I recently had a negotiation for a piece of software my company is going to do a renewal on. And so what do I want in the renewal as sort of the CFO of this company? Guess what's the one thing I probably want?
Less money.
Darn right. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Right. So, but the account manager was fascinating to me. I mean, very confident and just kind of laid out, hey, here's, so this is our price, like very confidently laid out their price and said, hey, here, this is how this is going to go down. And I think even used those words and just laid out their pricing incredibly confident. And I'm kind of like, oh, this isn't going to be as simple as it usually. Yeah. Like I sort of had a realization. I'm dealing with a pro here, right? So you can pick up on these things pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Though, so I'll let you know how I do in our next round.
No, I can't wait.
Yeah,
record the call if you can, because then we could just critique it.
We're going to play for the audience and then see.
I'll bring a laser.
All right, we got a lot to get through.
Yes, stop messing around, man. Start with the bet. Leverage loss aversion, endowment effect, and sunk costs, i.e. the nibble. That is loaded with something.
So this is kind of the second thing to think about in the process of negotiation. So I'm going to talk about the bet with you. So this is a little bit about loss aversion. So what is loss aversion? Let me tell you what it is. Loss aversion. Well, actually, let's demonstrate with a little bit of math, Fred. So,
oh gosh,
here's the math question for you. So I will bet you a coin toss, actually a series of coin tosses, so more than one. And there's two types of bets. So heads, you win $10. Tails, you get $0.
Okay.
Or we'll do another kind of bet where it's heads, you win $20, tails, you lose $10. Which bet would you take?
10 to 0 or 20 to 10?
Yeah, you lose $10, right? You win 20, lose 10 in the second bet.
Well, I go 10-0.
10-0. Why'd you pick that?
Downside smaller.
Right. It's not. It's the exact same bet. Right. So 50% of 10 is $5. 50% of 0 is 0. So therefore that bet is worth $5. 50% of $20 is $10. 50% of minus $10 is obviously minus 5. Again, they're both 5 is the expected value of both of those bets. They are the exact same bet. But why do we pick the first one? Everybody, by the way, picks the first one.
Yeah.
Right. But why? Because there's no downside. Right. And so what that's meant to be illustrative of is, I told you it was a math question, right?
Yes. And
don't feel like you failed. I've asked people that question
a million times,
dozens of times. Oh, there's one person who got it, who saw it right away. One person.
I was prepared with the. You were going to start. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to flip it 3 times, and now what do you bet? And no, the bet doesn't change because it's still 50-50, right? But a lot of people fall prey to that one.
Yeah.
As well.
So it's called. It's a very, very human problem. It's called loss aversion or the endowment effect. It's actually really, just Google it. It's fascinating to read about. So humans are genetically programmed to over-index on the downside of. Most kind of anything math oriented, anything statistically oriented. Yeah. So a fear of flying, right? Logically, if you think about your statistical likelihood of actually getting in an accident, you would never get in a car.
Yeah, right.
You would fly. You would fly everywhere you could, right? Yeah. Statistically. Yeah. But do humans think of it that way? No, totally the opposite, right? Yeah. Humans are super bad at statistical thinking. Right. So anyway, and that is called loss aversion or endowment effect. So why is that important in negotiation? The important thing is to in the process realize where the other side is going to have loss aversion and leverage that in the negotiation. Right. So, if they say we demand that you give us X, you say, okay, no problem, but we're going to have to take away Y. Even if Y and X are equal, if we made them an equal number of some sort, Y is bigger.
There's a cost, right?
Even though the two numbers are the same, in their heads, Y is bigger. Taking something away has a larger effect than adding something.
So this is why we didn't write about it in the book. It is book upon book upon book. Once you get into this,
I'm talking about stuff that it's been known about human condition for years. It's like basic psychology. Yeah.
And it's impossible to get into a topic like this without getting into psychology, right? Like, like talking about
super deep.
Talking about Voss, right? Like and the little techniques that he uses. And when you go home and you try them, like, holy smokes, they work, right? This stuff is phenomenal. And so you do have to then understand something about the human psyche to be effective, as effective as you possibly can with negotiations.
Well, this leads to another kind of process thing that you're going to do in the negotiation that's really important. It's called the nibble. So because of the endowment effect, people are also misapprehend or over-index on what are called sunk costs. So in other words, let's say we're 75% of the way through the negotiation, right? Or no, maybe let's make it we're 90% of the way through the negotiation. That is the time where the other side is the most vulnerable to you coming in and not quite renegotiating, but re-indexing on a lot of the negotiation. And why is that? Is because of sunk cost theory. They don't want to, now that they're so close, they don't want to lose.
Let it slip away.
They don't want it to slip away. So this is the time where you can step in and do what is called the nibble. It sounds...
I'm waiting. Yeah, okay, this is a family show.
Right.
So let's explain what we're talking about quickly.
No, nibble is just a small thing that maybe a small thing or a group of small things that you would ask for in a negotiation. So this is one of my favorite things to do when I'm negotiating for a house, right? So like at the end, when you're getting close to getting paper signed, that's when I'll be like, you know what would be good is a home warranty.
Yeah, of course.
It's a small thing. It doesn't cost that much for the other side to provide that, right? But just yeah. You know,
throw that in.
Some of these windows, it'd be good if they were like freshened up and we had newer windows.
Yeah.
Right. You see what I'm saying? Like just like these little things you can come in the beginning. So just I'm telling you that up front, and we're having a process discussion, but it sounds like something should come later. But you actually want to start thinking about that in the upfront. Like, what's the list of the little things that I want to hold on to that I don't want to talk about upfront because it seems like a big deal, and then we get those things negotiated away. I want to hold those off to the end, and I've got like a little group of items that I'm gonna.
You have a handful of levers you can go.
Yeah, just some little things at the end that where I know they're the most vulnerable to loss aversion and sunk cost. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the second process step.
And you will see these things play out. Like as you talk about these things, I'm like, oh, yep, that happened in my last 6 negotiations.
Yes.
Right. When you get real money on the table, until the ink is on the page, nothing is done.
Nothing's done.
Nothing is done.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So then we have so anchors away, man. So we get a nibble, and then.
Well, no, the nibbling comes later, but I'm talking about it up front because we're talking about how you are holding off these things.
Yeah.
But from a process standpoint, you start the negotiation with, so you're starting with stay in your own style, section off some things that are, the nibbles, and but you start with anchors away. And so what that means is, which is very appropriate for 2 squids to talk about. Yeah. So when you start actually getting into the main items that you're going to negotiate, and you want to, because you've prepared and your BATNA and all those things, you want to set the anchor, particularly when you have more knowledge than the other party. There are times where it is actually better for the other party to set the anchor. But when we talk about anchoring, what anchoring means is there's a price range for this product that's between, let's call it $40 and $60. What's the temptation? If they want it to be $40 and you want it to be $60, what's the temptation?
You just go in and drop the anchor at 60 or 70.
Well, no. Right? The temptation is to split the difference, right?
Well,
yeah. That's the temptation. Yeah. Instead, what this says is you want to set the anchor, right? So in that case, like. You might set the anchor higher than where you think it should be. So you set the anchor maybe at 70 or maybe at 59.9, right? So the anchor can not just be, and so the anchor. There are all kinds of studies about this. Whoever kind of puts out the first number or the first thing, everybody fixates on that, and the negotiation starts from there. So that's why it's called anchoring, right? And so this is so important. You do that preparation step we were talking about the last podcast, because like if you if you prepare and you prepare ahead of time, you can set up all of your anchors that you're saying to people because you've thought about it ahead of time. That's why that prep step is so important. And all kinds of logic shows if your goal is 60, you set the anchor at 70, they will come up to, beyond 50.
They'll come
from their 40 to beyond 50 to closer to where you are. That's just been proven over and over and over.
And so walk me through a little bit of, in that scenario, when you drop the anchor, you're starting the negotiation. You are in a room with your team and your client, right? Mm-hmm. And walk me through a little bit of how you drop that anchor, because there is a thing of if you anchor too heavily. So if the range is 40 to 60 and you go, well, I'm just going to go in at 90.
Yeah.
Then you kind of get laughed out of the room, or you lose credibility when you say, I'm willing to drop my expectation in half, right?
You have to have some, you have to be somewhere near the zone of agreement, right? Yeah, exactly. You have to, so that is a little bit delicate what I'm saying. What I am saying as an absolute fact is don't just split the difference.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Intellectually not stimulating.
Intellectually lazy.
Yeah.
Is the better way to say it. Exactly. Yeah. No, you're right. If you're an aggressive negotiator, you can set the anchor too high and blow up a negotiation.
Yeah.
Right. I've seen that.
I've seen people do that, and you just lose all credibility. If you come in with a crazy number,
but what I would say is, for a lot of account managers, they tend to not be the type of people who anchor crazy. Yeah. They tend to be super reasonable people. They tend to be
conservative, actually.
Yeah, they tend to be problem solver kinds of people, and so they don't think of doing this, and so that's why we're encouraging it. Yep. If you're maybe a more aggressive type business person or maybe a salesperson, this is second nature to you, and you don't even need to be told this. But we're talking about it here a lot for a reason, which is kind of that account man. The account manager is responsible for the relationship, and so I always kind of come back to price when we're talking about these examples, because it's
easy.
It's sort of the easy thing to talk about, because it's the hardest sort of part of being an account manager, because you're trying to keep the relationship good, but you have to go in and ask for a higher price.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting to you is not just ask for a higher price to get them to split the difference. Anchor high.
Yeah.
From where you think you should be. Yeah. That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, and within moderation. Now, when you're kind of thinking about the anchor, setting the anchor, focus on interests and not positions.
Yeah, that's right. So that's kind of the next step of the process, right? So as you're actually negotiating, so let's say you set the anchor on 5 different issues, delivery time and specs and price and quality and whatever it's easy when I've seen negotiations devolve into this, and I talked about this big negotiation I was in the last podcast episode, where one of the things that I had to guard against, and even my own team would do this, is particularly if you're in a really big, really complex negotiation, it can get really, really frustrating, right? And you are overly focused on the exact thing they said that they want, right? Can you believe that after the meeting? Can you believe those guys? They said they want us to do X, Y, and Z, and that's just totally crazy. And I can't believe they would ask for that. And these guys are mean, and I don't like them, and blah blah blah. All that. Instead, take a step back. Why did they want that? What purpose are they really trying to serve? Right? What are their interests here? And are those real?
Yeah. What are they trying to solve for?
Yeah.
And how important is that?
Right.
Right.
Because if you really sit down and start thinking about what their interests are organizationally, it may be that this person, this individual on their team wants this, but organizationally, do they really want it? Maybe not. Right.
Yeah. And you think you may be able to find the answers to some of those things, and sometimes you may not. there's a lot of times you will find an answer that you think is the answer that may not be the answer. So in any negotiation, you are very likely going into a lot of unknowns, right? There's a lot of knowns, but there's a lot of unknowns. Like since the last time you negotiated this contract with this organization, they may have a new C-suite, they may have new interests, they may have launched a new product, they may have new interests, right? And so you're going in to learn more kind of about the organization, even though you're doing all your homework and all that good stuff. To me, negotiations come back to this, there's a parable thingy out there where it just results in like, we'll see. Right. And I've shared this with everybody. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Right. The farmer and the horses run away. That's horrible. We'll see. The horses come back and they bring more horses. Oh, that's great. We'll see. And then the kid breaks his arm. We'll see. You know, like that's horrible. Well, we'll see. Then the army comes to recruit and they can't take the kid because he's got a broken arm. Oh, that's great. Well, we'll see. Right. So there's this combination of, I don't know, we'll have to see how these things unfold. And I think in negotiations, it lends itself to that specifically within this practice, right? It lends itself to, you know, kind of what you were saying of, can you believe they took the position on this, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's understand why. And it may be a good thing. It may be a bad thing. We don't know yet.
Yeah. Well, right. And this is where the sort of the Chris Voss thing you were doing a minute ago really comes into play. This is where I tell people, when you negotiate, one of the most powerful tools you can use is reflection. So in other words, let's say you just asked me for, you know, some parameter that you need in the negotiation. So you need the percentage rate to be 8% of something.
Whatever. Sure. Yeah.
And that's outrageous for me, right? So one technique would be that is 8%. Stop there.
Yep.
And just see what comes out after that. Right. And what you might find, you might actually get at what their interest is. I was using interest rate. Now I'm confusing two things. But point being, you know, you might actually get to the why do they want it, right? Yep. Why does it need to be that way? And you're getting closer to interest. Or even sometimes this works really well. I've done this many times in negotiation, particularly when I am not the vendor, but instead I am the client. It's just silence.
They say.
Enjoying the podcast but want to learn more best practices for account management? Pick up a copy of A Dragon Walks Into a Meeting, a tactical guide to client management. Available at Amazon or wherever books are sold.
They say, silence is golden. And let me tell you something. No, you're laughing, and I feel the same way of like, man. And again, it gets back to the psychology thing, like the reflecting, like repeating 3 words back to you and a slight head tilt. That will provoke a response. Silence. People cannot stand silent. And I will say with great ownership, I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
I have to focus really hard in those moments where that is a tool that you're going to leverage. I have to focus really hard to like, silence is okay. This is okay. Sit with it. Sit with it.
I've done that in negotiating, and it gets really uncomfortable.
Very.
It's really uncomfortable, right? I'm just sitting there looking. I actually think, you know, all the times you and I have been yelled at by clients.
And sometimes we didn't even deserve it. Once. Maybe once.
I don't know. I think. All the times we've been yelling at clients, I actually think when they're quiet, it's 10,000 times worse.
Oh, yes.
When you deliver, when you have to make a debit, right?
Yeah.
When you have to make a major debit and you kind of drop that debit off and they just kind of go real quiet. Ooh,
yeah, it is.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah, I think I've talked about this. I had a client that called me every Friday afternoon and yelled at me, blessed me out. 3:00 in the afternoon, I could set my clock by it.
Oh, well, it's nice. It's nice when it's expected like that.
It truly, truly was. But you just in time learn that, you know, like that's part of the game, and you gotta work with it, right?
Right.
So I think.
What has that to do with silence, though?
Well, because knowing that he was calling me and yelling at me and barking at me meant that I was better than silence.
Well, yeah. You actually have the power in that dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Because he needs you for some reason. It's always a he. Yeah.
She, whatever. Yeah, sure.
If the person had called you and you had a conversation that just got real quiet, that would make me nervous as a client manager.
Yeah. No, you welcome the call at 3:00 on Friday.
Okay. If you're yelling at me, that means it's it's the thing we talked about this. We talked about this in other podcasts. The opposite of love is not hate; it's indifference.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, I love it when he quit calling. We actually solved the problem. We took the initiative and reached out and figured out what the challenge was and kind of solved for that, which is a lesson unto itself. But nonetheless, sometimes getting yelled at is actually a good thing in some weird way.
It's a good segue to talk just briefly about it. It's sort of the same thing as focusing on interests and not positions, or maybe a sub point there, which is, and this speaks to your example a little bit, is you really have to separate the people from the problem, right? So when you go into negotiation, this is a really important process step. Think about being hard on the problem, not hard on the people.
Yeah.
Right. And that's something I say a lot in operations things as well. Like something broke, something's going wrong. Let's get hard on this problem, but we're not going to be hard on the individuals, right? Nobody wants to mess up, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to take that same mindset. And when you go into a negotiation, because like the other side could be driving you crazy with what it is that they're trying to do, but you really, and their mannerisms, and they have these verbal tics, and this person has spinach between their teeth and bad breath, and all those things, right? You really have to kind of not pay attention to that and really just focus on the problem at hand.
Yeah, there again, it's extracting the emotion from it, right? That's what you're really doing is let's get emotion out of it, because that will never serve you well, right? And let's focus on let's address the problem itself. It's an interesting thing because we're talking specifically about negotiations here, but a lot of early stage account managers and people that are kind of new to the discipline will find themselves on the receiving end of a tirade or a frustrated client, and they will internalize that. Right. They will internalize that and they're yelling at me, and it's no. They're not yelling at you. This is where you have to look at it from an entity to entity perspective and take the people out of it. Right.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. All right. So then leverage relationships and the reciprocity norm, but beware of the traps.
Yep. So that's the next part of the process. So as you're getting into the negotiation, you're getting to know the people. You're giving on some things, you're getting some things. As you're going through that process, you want to be aware of the reciprocity norm. So the reciprocity norm is exactly what it sounds like, which is a very well documented human psychological phenomenon. If somebody does something good or bad for you, what is the expectation? Likewise will happen in return, right? It's just that simple. It's the golden rule, and it is unbelievably powerful, right? And it's one of the. So when you go over to a friend's house for dinner, and you had dinner, what do you say at the end of the dinner?
Thank you for dinner. I don't really like fish, so if you have chicken, give me a call.
Okay, let me start over. I actually got to laugh. Let's start. What do normal people say at the end of the dinner?
Thanks so much for dinner. I had a lovely evening.
What do normal people say?
What the hell? I don't know.
They say,
you got gravy with these taters?
They say, we need to have you over to our house for dinner.
Oh, reciprocity. Yeah.
Sometimes I think you're missing the thread.
I just had to keep you on your toes, man. We got listeners that are like, what did they talk about? Zopa, Batna.
The reciprocity norm. Yeah. So remember in the last podcast, I told a little story about like every time I would give something in the negotiation, she would give me kind of a piece of candy, right? Well, that is that it made a little bit of a joke out of the reciprocity norm, right? Because they weren't really kind of giving me anything in the negotiation. What I was setting up, though, was I was setting up kind of the longer game of, hey, when we get to all these kind of pricing things,
that's right.
oh, hey, guys, we already agreed to everything you asked for. So now when we get down to the stuff that I care about, I kind of want it to go my way, and it worked. Right.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that is the reciprocity norm in action. The candy really wasn't. I didn't really need candy. That wasn't. I didn't view that as reciprocity.
What kind of candy was it?
Well,
Don't rush to judge it. Like if it was Pop-Tarts, come on, man.
I think it was something bad, like Werther's Originals, like something like your grandma.
Oh my God! Somebody told me the other day that I should carry around because I've started wearing my cardigans. Somebody said I should carry some Werther's in the pockets. give them my little
No
kids
one on listening to this podcast is going to know what Werther's Originals are. Like they're going to have no idea what is the reference. Like they don't know what a cardigan is. They won't have any idea what the. So if you have no idea what, actually, I don't know if you know this. We have quite a few international listeners.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if they have. If you have this candy in England, can you email us and tell us if this is a? I don't. They probably don't have it in Australia. We have quite a few Australian.
Yeah, well, I know we do.
Yeah.
I know we do.
And I don't know if they have Werther's down there. I mean, it's this hard candy that's kind of like caramel, and it's a
okay. Stop. You are my gosh.
If you want to chip a tooth, it is the best. If you want to chip a tooth, it's a fantastic candy.
But if you want to sip on a coffee on a cool afternoon,
you are the oldest man
enjoy in your cardigan. So if we take these relationship reciprocity norm, now we're giving away caramels to everybody. But the question then becomes, all right, so many times we're doing this, we're looking and we go, okay, we have this much surface area to play with. And that is often maybe miscalculated. And then everybody gets focused then on price, right? So how do you think about the playing field?
So this is kind of the sort of final sort of process thing that you have to keep in mind, which is, and this goes back to the preparation thing we talked about in the last podcast.
Yep.
Think ahead of time of what you might offer up that's novel, that can enlarge the pie of the conversation, so to speak. That was a really mixed metaphor.
Wasn't
good. It's awkward. Let's keep going.
See.
We'll just paper over the awkwardness we'll keep going. The point being, like, so, let's say you have 5 dimensions you're negotiating on, and you're negotiating on price and quality and delivery time and, SLAs. And, these are the 5 things, and we really care about this. And, what are some other things I can add into the mix? This is obviously maybe bigger negotiations, like smaller, more distributed negotiations. You wouldn't necessarily do all this, but like, what are some other things I can add into the mix? This is where you need to use your creativity, right, as an account manager team. And this is where you, in that prep step as an account manager, you need to go around, start talking to your executives and saying, hey, what else? I want some dimensions we can, and if you frame it with your executives, you say, I want some dimensions we can negotiate on so that I'm not negotiating on price. They will warm up to that idea very, very quickly, right? That's how you get buy-in from your team. Like, I don't want to do it. Like, now your development team or your engineering team or your product team or some other teams may not be excited about this idea because it might involve kind of something that they have to do, this extra work. But I can guarantee you, your executive team, if you can figure out ways that you're negotiating on these things and not on price, they're going to be super interested in that conversation.
And you have interests in so many things that will impact your price or your success or your productivity. Right. And those are the things, right? So in one negotiation I was involved in, it was, to your point, it was all about price. And it was the question that we kind of stumbled upon was, what do we do to drive so that we could actually meet that price? Like, what do we need to do to make that price possible? And one of the things that we needed was a different presence in their online real estate. And so we went to them and said, right. And that was one of those late game things that said, hey, if you want the price, cool, we can. Yeah, that's right. So give us this real estate and then we can drive all the activity you want. But if you got us buried down there below the footer, kind of hard, right? Like, think about the bigger picture, the pie.
Yeah. Think about the pie. Yeah. The reason why that matters to prices, and we'll do an episode on pricing, I think, one day, but the average P&L in the United States, a 1% change in the top line. In other words, a 1% change in price, because prices, or revenues, price times volume, right?
Yeah.
A 1% change in price results in an 8% change in the bottom line in the average P&L in the United States. Now that's like manufacturing, not, technology is a little bit different because it's technology is a lot more fixed costs, but kind of on average, right? And so price has an absolutely outsized effect on the bottom line. And so that's why I'm kind of framing this as, hey, try to, your just kind of final process step is thinking during the negotiation, thinking of ways you can enlarge the pie so that you're not fighting on price as an account manager.
And this comes back to some of the things that we've talked about before, right? We talked about finance not long ago, right? A couple of 2 episodes ago, or last we talked about finance. What are your variable costs and your fixed costs? Because that's what you're talking about. If I can get a 1% increase in price, my fixed costs don't change. My variable costs change just a little bit. So the impact to the bottom line is much greater than that 1% potentially, right?
That's right.
And so that's where now you need to know the finance piece. Like you didn't get to listen to that episode and then like, oh, that's cool, I don't want to mess with it. Like it's important.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Anyway, that's why the executives are going to be super interested in that conversation.
That's right.
And so you look sophisticated if you're going around thinking about that ahead of a big negotiation that you have to do.
Okay. Now, because we have a long episode and a lot of material, I'm going to put you under the gun on this one. Okay. We're going to hit this next section. This next section is called common mistakes. And so I'm going to give you 5 minutes and 23 seconds to cover these. Common mistakes, John Brown, go. That's not what we're doing. I thought we tried different.
Mistake number 1. Let me tell you what it is.
Pick a good partner, good business partner.
Let me tell you what mistake number 1 is.
That hurts. That hurts a little bit.
All right, I'm going to go through. I'm going to go through a list. This is a long list of kind of common mistakes. The reality is, we talked about some of these mistakes before, but there's a lot of things you can do wrong in a negotiation. But I will boil all of these down to. Control. It's kind of the fourth one that is the most important in some ways, but controlling your emotions is probably the number one thing, right? Like there's a negotiation book. It wasn't on my list of recommendations, but there was, I think the title was something like, you should care, but not that much, right? When you enter a negotiation, right? Like nobody's going to die. And so you kind of you really have to keep your wits about you. That's why that preparation step is so important. But anyway, here, let's talk about a few. The first is irrational escalation of commitment. So this speaks to what I was saying before. It's called deal fever. So you get to that 90% point and you feel like you can't turn back. That's why it's so important to think about the BATNA ahead of time. Like you still have to be willing to kind of walk away. What's your alternative to getting this agreement done? A lot of people, when they get to the 90% point, they're very vulnerable to the other side doing something. And then they irrationally commit. So you told the story of, the price kind of went down, then it went down a little bit more, and then it goes down a little bit more, and then it goes down. And then, oops, we're cooked.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Like,
that's exactly right.
And you could have irrationally escalated commitment. Instead, you did the wise thing, which is just, all right, let's put a pin in this and say,
that's right.
We need to start over. This isn't working, right? And that, that's avoiding irrational escalation. The thing I use to illustrate this when I talk about negotiations with account managers, we can't really do it here, but it's called the $20 auction. And how it works is like you auction off 20. You've seen me do this before, right?
Yeah,
like you auction off $20 and you say, whoever wins the negotiation has to pay, the second highest bidder has to pay for whoever wins the bid. And so what that does is sets up a dynamic where everybody irrationally escalates and so people wind up buying $20 for $100, right?
Yeah,
like real competitive types are real subject to that kind of thinking, right? So particularly if you're a competitive negotiation, you're the next one is not using silence or reflecting. So we talked about that one already a minute ago, but like just using the power of, like, if you don't have anything to say, you can't think of anything clever to say, just don't say anything. Just see what pops out on the other side. You might just pick up some new information, right?
It's like powerful. It is really powerful. And here's the other thing I'll say. And this is why earlier I mentioned like these skills transfer beyond negotiations. I have discussed this power of silence thing with a fair number of very, very successful people, and they all use it daily, like daily, right? So if you want to know, like, what do the executives do different? That's probably one of them. They come into the room, they don't need to say anything,
Right.
and people will just divulge anything to, like, it's power.
I use it a lot more the older I get. Like if somebody's really kind of, I can tell they're worked up with me, I'll just get real quiet and just start listening. Right. And like, and eventually, usually they talk themselves, they really solve their emotions in all of their talk, and then they calm down, and then the problem goes away.
They go back to work.
Here's the flip side of what we were just talking about a minute ago. This next one, don't anchor based on irrelevant information such as their initial offer. So the other side knows about anchoring a lot of times.
Everybody knows about anchoring.
Yeah. So, you know, just be careful. Like they might be doing it to you.
That's right.
So don't do that. The fourth one is dealing with emotion. We just talked about that, but you know, the sub point on this one is the subtlety is, if you are doing a big complex negotiation and there's email involved, we've talked about email ad nauseum on this podcast, but like you get that email and like you are hot. I can't believe these guys are doing this, that they're asking for this. They copied all of our executives. You feel like you've got to reply right away. No. Go around to all those people in email, say, hey, don't reply.
I got it.
I've got this. I will respond. We will do it cool-headed, and we will do it tomorrow. In the meantime, I'm going to come up with a plan, or send a note to everybody else. Say, don't reply to this. I got it. Let's have cool heads. Right. Don't reply to that email. Next one is don't make threats. If you guys don't give us this, we're going to your competitor. It doesn't work, and usually causes the other side to just withdraw.
That's TV theater. Right.
It's junior. You look junior when
you look really, really junior when you do it.
Yeah.
One of the rules of negotiations is be careful you don't paint yourself in a corner or in too many corners.
Yeah.
And when you come out with threats, you are starting to really limit the items available to discuss and explore and solve for, right? Like you're just it's generally infantile.
And generally, if you're a account manager, you're probably not going to do that because like it's your client on the other side of the table. So you probably doesn't lend itself well to that kind of thing. But I've seen it every once in a blue moon, but just it's not productive on either side.
Here's what you will see. You will see sometimes your executives will actually say, oh my, they can't talk to, and they'll be full of bluster. Most of them know enough not to call the client with all that bluster, but once in a while, you never know. I've seen it happen. Mm-hmm. And so that's probably one of the bigger things of, if you are the recipient of threats or anything of that nature, then you need to manage that internal, like to your point, hey, I got it, don't do anything. But the executives are some of the ones that you have to manage against the emotional response, right?
We've talked a lot in this podcast about how the executives sometimes can be your worst enemy on this stuff. Yeah, so you have to manage them also. This other one is around the lines of, you see this often is failing to consider the other side's perspective, and in particular, failing to consider their BATNA.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a very common mistake. A lot of people, you need to spend a little time just marinating and, okay, what's going on in these guys' heads, right? And the more experienced you get, the more you can project into other people. It's harder earlier in your career, but it's pretty important.
It's big. It's powerful. Don't lose sight of that.
The next mistake a lot of people make, particularly if you're competitive negotiations type, is overconfidence, overestimating your leverage, and then being surprised when it's not what you thought. Again, most account managers in a B2B sort of situation, not really too prone to this. I've seen it every once in a while. I think it certainly I've been on the receiving end of that from, I actually had this happen to me recently. So, I'm negotiating for a piece of software that's I'm not going to say the names. It's a messaging, software that a lot of companies use internally, and, it has competitors, right? So it's an instant messaging platform. Yeah. It's very, very popular.
Okay.
And so I started negotiating with them as obviously in the financial role. Can you guess what I want out of them?
bigger prices.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want
No, the opposite. Yeah. And so and they are really, really unwilling to negotiate even at all. I mean, it's been a lot of email kind of back and forth, and I'm watching it. And I will say this, like, I am probably not going to in this go round get rid of them, but man, I'm starting to think about the long run.
Yeah.
I'm not in this year, but for the next one that comes up, if I'm still at this company, I'm like, you know what?
I think that is such a popular mistake.
Yeah.
Like now I've gotten big. I've got big valuations.
Yeah,
I'm an 800-pound gorilla.
They know that it's hard for me to rip out this software, that it would be painful. They know that, but like they're not even willing to give me an inch.
Yeah, like that's just
and so
poor management.
That's going in the file.
Well, tell me which stock that is, and I'll short it.
You don't want their stock.
Okay. All right. So then we get down to stating BAFO too early.
Yes. So what is BAFO? That's another acronym.
Yeah, I actually got to be honest with you, man.
You know what BAFO?
I could make some stuff up.
Best and final offer.
Oh, yes, I know that.
I knew as soon as you said it, you were going to go, I knew that.
I don't like this. I don't like this podcast anymore.
Oh, really?
No.
You're going to quit in the middle?
I'm going to
You're gonna
stop.
throw your stuff down.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I'm going to start yelling. I'm going to yell at Devin on the way out, too.
But you're going to kick his chair?
Well, I'm not going to do that. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
But I'll yell at him.
Problematic.
Okay.
Can we talk about BAFO?
Yeah, let's talk about BAFO. Let's get back to
A best and final offer.
Yeah.
So I have been, I have a story about this. So the big negotiation, I've been telling this ongoing story. Listen, if I ever write a book about that job, I could write a book about
It's
this
chapters.
thing. It's a crazy story.
I know it. I actually know it quite well.
Yeah, I've told this. It was before you and I worked together. But anyway, so this was I was in the account management role and big, large, giant client. And again, we talked about I'd mentioned they had all the power, none of the leverage. They BAFO'd me.
Okay.
They said
Here it is.
Around pricing, and they were
Take it or leave it.
and I left it. And I broke them. Like I remember talking to their they BAFO'd me and I knew they didn't have the goods.
Yeah. Right. You call their bluff.
Yeah, I called their bluff and I came back to them with revised pricing that was better for me. And I remember very distinctly their person. They had a global sourcing person whose job it was just to negotiate these kinds of contracts. And I remember him. He said it in like a whine to me on the phone. He said, "It's almost like you've got me negotiating against myself." Like he said it almost with that tone.
Come here, tiger.
Yeah, and I'm like,
here, little buddy.
Yeah, and I just had to laugh. I'm like, you BAFO'd me too early, right? Like, yeah, it didn't work. And like once I broke them, then I was starting to get more and more stuff because like I knew
okay,
their
game's up.
BAFO was over.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. But the caveat being, unless it really is your final offer.
Well, that's the whole thing. Comes back to like painting yourself in the corner, right?
Right.
Like the BAFO is borderline threatenish.
It can't,
depending on how it's delivered, right?
Yeah. Well. You better believe. Here's the problem. Like, and this is an account manager, something you have to worry about. Like, your executives can say to you, "You need to go in with BAFO, and it looks like this." You need to look them in the eye and say, "Is this? Are you willing to walk away after this?" Because if they start squirming and worming, like, well, then it's not BAFO, and don't present it like that. Because they will smell that coming a mile away, and then they're going to break you just like I broke that other person. Right?
And if you don't ask for that clarity, and it goes up in smoke, you're holding the bag.
Yeah,
I mean, like, and really, and then somebody those same people will look at you and say, "Figure it out."
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah. They'll act like you're accountable. They'll be like, they told you, go tell the client this is BAFO. And you delivered the message, and oops, it wasn't BAFO.
You're holding that one on your own. You're holding that. And that is again,
on the wind.
Again, we talk about it, I think, on every single episode, like managing up, managing down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything.
Yeah.
So look, that's a great list of common mistakes. And
That's my favorite mistake, the BAFO.
The BAFO one. Yeah. You just go big and like, you're just kind of out on the runway by yourself holding your bag, right? Like, you're trying to thumb a plane the next one. Yeah.
You think your executives are smarter than you and they are better negotiators and more experienced, and don't assume that. Particularly if you read like one or two of these books trust me, you will be better than
more than most, right? Yeah, without a doubt.
Trust me.
Without a doubt. I think that's a great point. When you think about negotiations and you look at the amount of material out there and the amount of training out there, it's easy to think like you could study negotiations your entire life and never figure it out. And the reality is, no, most people haven't. Yeah. Most people don't have it figured out. The comparative number of people in this world that do is like 10. Right. So become number 11. Go grab a book, educate yourself, put things.
We said the last podcast, you're always learning, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like you'll never stop that. But like, can you be better than 90% of the people out there in literally weeks? Yes,
you can. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So with that comes negotiations don't go down without always having some sort of like ethical, legal, moral
this is
contrast, right?
Yeah, that's right. So this kind of final piece is like there's a lot of times you get a negotiation and you start looking at the other party and you kind of start accusing them of ethical issues because they're like lying to you and things like this. This is where you get into real heavy negotiation that's kind of ugly. Right? Like they're lying to you and it's like ethical issues. Be aware of like where this really, what the sort of legal parameters around a negotiation are. And so I'll read you a definition just to kind of spell it out. So a lot of things that people think are ethical issues, it's more they're personalizing it. Like some of the stuff that we talked about before, right? Not personalizing the negotiation and just focusing on what their interests are, not the things they say, all this sort of stuff. But
feelings are not law.
That's right. So, here's what fraud is in the business definition. So in the United States, this is U.S. law, but the definition is it's misrepresentation of a material fact where a party has knowledge of the falsity, which is called scienter in legal lingo speak. There's a word. I want you to use that word tonight in your family
gathering
and see what
we'll do it. Probably while we're playing Twister.
Intent to deceive and induce, that causes intent to receive and induce reliance, where the other party has justifiable and actual reliance on the misrepresentation, and this results in damages.
Yep.
That's the definition of fraud. The thing is, negotiations are not, you are very much allowed in U.S. case law to misrepresent your position in negotiations.
Oh, wow.
Yes, you're totally allowed to do that because it doesn't meet that test of the definition of fraud, right? So you're misrepresenting a fact.
Well, you're misrepresenting some future prognostication, right?
Yeah, but if it's a negotiation, the other party may not really have actual reliance on the misrepresentation, and it probably doesn't result in damages. And you see what I'm saying? So like that long definition I read, like to actually be fraud has to check like a bunch of legal boxes for it to actually be fraud, right? So the point with that is case law really does support like, hey, if you misrepresent your reservation price, that's sort of the classic example. Like I'm willing to pay $100 for this, but I'm negotiating around $50. You are not doing anything illegal.
Right.
Right. Like that's totally allowed. And it should be, right. Like, because it's a negotiation. So the point is you're allowed to misrepresent your actual sort of what you are actually willing to do. Here's what's not legal, or where you start to get into, or you can't get into trouble, is non-symmetric negotiations. So and the classic example is, this is never going to happen to anybody on this podcast or you and me, but there's stories of like big oil company goes and negotiates with a little old lady who's living on a plot of land that they know has a ton of oil underneath it. That's a non-symmetric negotiation because like they didn't, she doesn't have the information to know that there's a ton of oil sitting underneath my plot of land. That is going to be looked kind of pretty negatively. But if you have symmetric parties, like one giant oil company wants to buy a piece of land from another giant oil company, and they start to misrepresent like what they're willing to pay and what they're willing to do and all that kind of stuff, that's not fraud.
I think there's probably a general rule that aligns with if it doesn't feel good, right? If it doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't right.
Yeah,
like, think about it, right? Let your conscience be your guide a little bit. Be aware that it is business, right? And so while I definitely would never suggest engaging in fraudulent behavior, keeping facts close to your vest and managing a conversation in a big negotiation is critical.
I should be super clear on this point. Like, if you can misrepresent your negotiation position. If you misrepresent what your product does or how it works operationally and that kind of thing, that can be fraud.
Right.
So that is not allowed. Right. But misrepresenting like what you're willing to live with in a negotiation, that is not fraud.
Yeah. And when in doubt, again, these negotiations are big enough. You're not going to be doing it by yourself in a room with one other person. You're going to have others around. So rely on others, talk to others, make sure that you collaborate and communicate and that you're all aligned with the communications that are taking place and the path you're going down, all those things, right? So it's not a cowboy thing. Don't do it alone. Be smart.
Yeah. Right? Materiality should be your guide, right? Like if it materiality and that it's an integrative negotiation, which rounds us back around all the way to the beginning of what we talked about at the beginning of the last podcast, which is an integrative negotiation. You have to live with these folks afterwards, right? You're their account manager. Yeah. So therefore, you need to very correctly and clearly represent what your product does, what you're willing to, what you are going to deliver. Like, you have to be honest, but what I am saying is, like, your sort of negotiation position and misrepresenting that, like what that part of it, that is allowed. Yeah. Yeah.
Look, again, negotiations, we could write chapter upon chapter. You could write a book about BATNA in and of itself, right? Like, this stuff can go on forever. There's a lot of incredibly insightful, intelligent, well put together, well communicated materials out there. So make sure that you do master this craft. It's critical.
Super important as account manager.
It's a powerful, powerful tool, and it will extend well beyond a contract negotiation. This has influence over how you interact with people in your family, at work, your clients, internal, external, all that, right?
Plus, it's kind of fun. So, a lot of times when I do this as a class for people, I'll give them the homework I'll ask them to just go negotiate something that they wouldn't ordinarily negotiate, right? You're renewing your cell phone contract. Go call the cell phone company. Just see what you can get. You'd be surprised.
You'd be amazed. Yeah. You'd be absolutely amazed.
Surprised. Our U.S. culture is we generally don't negotiate for consumer goods. Yeah. You'd be surprised what people are willing to negotiate. Now, don't do it at Target.
Yeah, I don't think the lady behind the counter.
No, don't. Pick your battles. But but
you'd
be surprised what people will do.
You will be absolutely surprised, and it's a lot of fun. Now, I will tell you this: we've been a very, very long time customer of a carrier, a telephone carrier. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to advertise. Long time, and you can call them periodically and go, "Hey, I just saw where you were doing like 3 months free or 3 months for half price or something."
Yeah,
I've been a client for 20 years, and I know that I'm incredibly profitable. Hook me up.
Yeah.
And they will tell you no. They will say, I can't do that, sir. I say, great. Can I talk to your boss? Don't get emotionally tied to the outcome. Just, hey, I've been a good customer. I'm loyal. Can you do something for me? That's all I'm asking.
Right.
They'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Like they will give it to you. When I called and needed to get a cell refresher because just for some reason in downtown Atlanta, the reception's not great. And I get on the phone and the guy's like, yeah, okay, we'll send you one of these things. It'll be $200. We're charging them. And I was like, no, you're what? Oh, what? No,
yeah. Well,
you're not going to charge me for equipment that I need to make your product work. And I've been with you guys for 15 years. Surely you can make this happen.
Well, you just were a great example of what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, which is you created leverage out of nothing, right? So a lot of times you think you have no leverage. It's the cell phone company, but you actually created leverage. How did you do it? You actually pointed out to them, I am a long-time customer. What do they want? They want to keep you as a customer.
That's right.
Right? Like,
I am profitable.
Yeah, you're right. And so you created leverage out of nothing. And that's one of the key points of leverage. A lot of people don't realize you can, if you are creative enough,
you find it.
You can create leverage.
Yeah.
Right. And so you just have to you have to sit and sort of think about it and go, yeah, the cell phone company, I actually have leverage with them, but you don't think about it. Right.
So I'm going to take that as a stroke of absolute genius. We're going to end this.
You ended this episode with how smart you are.
I'm trying to. Can you let me finish?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right. So that's how smart I am. But don't listen to me. Listen to John Brown. John, tell him how smart I am.
So smart.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys stop it. Thank you guys for listening. For John Brown, Fred Fuller, we'll catch you next time. Thanks a lot.
Learn more about the art and science of account management. Pick up A Dragon Walks Into a Meeting, a tactical guide to client management. Digital and print editions available at Amazon or your favorite bookseller. Fred and John would like to hear from you. Leave a comment for us on YouTube and head over to fuller-brown.com for more great content.